Hey, I'm Mark Hunter, the Sales Center, and I'm here today with Gerhard Gschwandtner, Selling Power, well, magazine, but Sales Conference 3.0. And hey, we have with us today Victor Antonio, who has written a new book, and believe me, he takes artificial intelligence and puts it into layman's terms. So, Victor, welcome to the show. Introduce yourself, and Gerhard, kick it off then.
Thank you guys for having me. Victor Antonio, author, speaker, sales trainer, and glad to be on the show.
And the book is called Ex Machina.
Sales Ex Machina, how artificial intelligence is changing the world of selling.
Right. So what qualifies you, a speaker, to write about artificial intelligence? Because you have so much natural intelligence.
Yeah. So the joke behind the joke for this question is that's one of the first things Gerhard asked me, like when I told him I'd written this book. He's like, what qualifies you? So the background is, most people don't know that I have an electrical engineering background and an MBA. And I started my life in actually the engineering world. And so I worked for Honeywell. And so I started working in their undersea systems division. So if you ever see the movie Hunt for Red October, you know, the Russian sub, the US sub, the torpedo system used on that was the Mach 46, and the next generation was the Mach 50. I worked on the Mach 50 generation of that torpedo in that movie. And that's where I learned everything about, at that point, really was more expert system, rule-based systems, but they were artificial intelligence systems, you know, thinking machines. And the way it worked is that when you drop the torpedo into the water, it would actually just go into a circular pattern, the sonar system would ping, and then it would actually do a pattern recognition, and the expert system, the AI system, would do classification of objects underwater with the objective of finding the enemy sub. And so I worked on some of that code. After that, I went actually to their test center and actually worked on testing discrete components. So all the components that actually go into all the munitions in the military, I've worked on a lot of those in terms of writing programming to make sure that the components, whether it's discretes, you know, like resistors, capacitors, or semiconductors or PLAs and so forth. So I did the testing for those as well. So I understand it from a systems level, and I began to understand things from actual component level, and I guess everything in between. And so I had to do a lot of writing of software code just to do a lot of testing for those two type of systems. That's what qualifies me.
Can you define artificial intelligence for us?
Well, there are different definitions, right? The closer we can replicate or mimic a human being, that's what people consider artificial intelligence. And the question always is, well, what does that mean? You know, what does it approximate artificial intelligence? When you say mimic, how close does it approximate? And in the book, I talk about the conversation that's going on and on about the point of singularity, right? Where if you look at two different tests, in the book I talk about the Turing test, right? The Turing test basically said around the 1950s by Alan Turing, it basically said, when a human being can't tell the difference of whether you're talking to a computer or a human being, you've reached a certain level of, you know, computer knowledge, artificial intelligence. Singularity is when, you know, now we're beyond just the rudimentary cognitive processing of giant algorithms and, you know, language learning, that I can now be creative and come up with things that maybe the human couldn't think of. And so, you know, I mean, people put it out there at not, you know, 2050, you know, as far as when we'll reach that point of singularity. But to me, artificial intelligence is how closely can we mimic what a person does in a given situation.
So there are two kinds of intelligence. One is in our brain, and we want to pursue some goals. And then you have artificial intelligence that can create a path like your torpedo that leads us to the goal. So how do those two merge?
Well, I think the problem we have from a human brain standpoint is that our processing power isn't as great, even though the capacity is there. Because you've heard the saying, right? We use 5 to 10% of our brains, right? So the capacity is there. We just haven't accessed that type of processing or cognitive power, which means we can't hold too many things in our heads at one time. If you think about it, sometimes it's the reason why we only have, you know, when you look at your telephone number, it's 3 digits, 4 digits, 3 digits, right? It's called chunking, right? They figured out we have like a, you know, a cognitive buffer. We can only hold so much information. We can't multitask. We have to do this or that. Where a machine kicks in is that it's able to hold that much more information, I'll say in, you know, present RAM, right? And be able to compare it with what's happening in its environment and then make an objective decision, pulling the emotional piece out, right? That part of the brain that, you know, that wants to make, you know, irrational decisions. It pulls that part out. So what's the difference and where's the merge? I think there's two different things going on. One is we're programming it. It's learning to think. It's learning to look at objective data based on the results it gets. It learns. We as human beings, we can have an experience and we'll still repeat the same mistakes But, we were talking earlier before the interview about, psychology, right? And I think the biggest thing that hinders us as human beings is confirmation bias. We want to see what we want to see. Now, let's tie it back to sales. I want to believe that deal is going to go through. I want to believe every deal in my pipeline is going to go, and that every interaction I had with the customer was a home run. That's what I want to believe. A machine can sit back and go, no, remove all that emotional element out of the actual decision-making process. And I think that's where a machine will, I think augment is the word I used in the book. A machine will augment us today. Artificial intelligence today is not going to replace us. It's going to augment our abilities.
What do you see as the practical applications in sales that are available right now?
Oh, the low-hanging fruit is obviously forecasting, right? But forecasting not only sales in the pipeline. So let's look at forecasting and sales, but also what markets to enter. Maybe what products to develop. When we look at inventory management, what raw materials should we be ordering? Based on the data I have, how can I calculate inventory turns, right? Because it's all about velocity when it comes to inventory, right? Making sure we don't have a lot of cash on the shelf. The one I'm excited about in the future, and we're going to write about it in the second book, is dynamic pricing. I think that is just going to be, how do you find the optimal price for a given product in a given market for a given market segment at a given time, right? So that's one aspect of it. But also think about what the future holds for us. That one day, think of a grocery store. This is where it gets exciting. I just get jacked up because if you think of a grocery store today, you got a lot of perishable foods, right? Some people estimate that maybe 50% of that food that goes bad is just dumped, right? Which is a shame. So what if we can use artificial intelligence, machine learning, to actually figure out this price dilemma that we have and also sell perishable food so we don't have to throw it away? How would that work? Think about it. How do we actually go into groceries? When you go to a grocery store today and you're going to buy something, 2 days before it's about to expire, they put it on sale, right? And so what happens? You see the guy with the gun, right? Label, 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 right? What if tomorrow the shelves are now, instead of the little stickers with the barcode, it's a little digital display. Little digital display. And what if we had all that data of when something was going to go bad, and instead of waiting for the last 2 days to do it, maybe start ratcheting down the pricing as the day approaches. Imagine how that would change. So that's optimal pricing. Imagine restaurants. You've been to those restaurants where they have the iPads already set up, right? Imagine for a moment that they get the idea to do dynamic pricing. Think about it. In the morning, not many people want to stop by and eat. Let's lower the price. A couple of strokes on the keyboard, the machine will tell you when to lower the price. As the flights start coming in, somewhere around 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock, that's the big bump in the curve. Let's move the price up a little bit. It's all about maximizing price. So I think that's a great place to actually exploit this in terms of selling.
What about the sales process? How can artificial intelligence remove the friction and the delays?
Right. So let's talk about, and we talked about this, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, Gerhard, because people asked the question, will AI replace the salesperson? Right? Good question. It's the wrong question. Just like in AI, you got to ask the right question to be able to get the right answer. The real question is, when you look at a salesperson's job, think of it as a stack of tasks, different tasks that they have to do. So then the question becomes, and I talk about this in the book, is which of these tasks can be automated so that we can give the salesperson more time to sell? So that's one. How do we free up the salespeople to actually do what they can do that a machine can't do, the human-to-human piece that they can't do? When you look at the sales process, imagine being able to now, within your CRM system, you got your gates, right? Your stages in your sales process. Within that system, now you're capturing not only every voice conversation, but every textual email exchange using natural language programming. You can actually, or processing, you can figure out, what are the words that they're saying? It's almost like a keyword cloud, right? You can figure out what phrases, and the machine will be able to tell you, is this deal going forward? And next thing you know, it's doing this reshuffling of prioritization and maybe moving the big deals that are more likely, to go through up to the top of the stack. What I love about that is it removes your confirmation bias. Again, what you want to happen. So the machine can actually tell you which deals are more likely to close based on the interactions, based on the information it has. And again, it'll look at latency, right? Time between communications. That's another variable. And so in the next book, one of the things we're going to talk about is what are the attributes that you look for to measure, your sales process. Is it effective or not? Sorry for the long answer.
Mark, what do you like about the book?
Well, I liked a lot of things about it, but I'm going to ask Victor a couple questions here because you really tripped my trigger on something. The whole pricing, dynamic pricing,
right,
and leading indicators versus lagging indicators. One of the problems sales has had is that we've kind of lived in the world of lagging indicators. The typical sales manager looks at all that stuff.
Right.
Artificial intelligence allows us to get into leading, looking at what's happening. And that really is what dynamic pricing is all about. And there's a comment I'm going to make, and then I want you to kind of run with this because salespeople are afraid of pricing. In other words, what I see happening is salespeople give away so much money because they're afraid the customer won't buy.
Great point.
That's where I see artificial intelligence coming in. Then people say, well, you could never bring dynamic pricing into my B2B sales situation. And I go, wait a minute. Isn't that what the airlines are doing right now? I mean, the airlines have been a master at this.
Yes.
And I think that's where so how does an organization take AI and around this whole realm of dynamic pricing?
Right.
Keeping the emotional aspect in sales, because I believe that emotional human-to-human element is never going to go away.
Right.
How do we bring that together?
See, it's a good point. I think the airline industry should be like the perfect prototype when you look at dynamic pricing and how we as human beings, consumers, accept the fact that prices change. It changes, right? The airline doesn't say, we said we're going to sell it for 300. Let's stick to 300. Airlines are like, I don't care about that. They throw the rules out the window, says we're going to do dynamic pricing, right? They get it because the machine is always adjusting to maximize profit on every plane. And so when you look at the complexity, the reason I think we don't like doing dynamic pricing is because it's too complex for this piece of gray matter to handle. Let's be honest, right? We can't do it. We can't manage it. And we can't go back to spreadsheets and try to cross matrix, right? After 2 dimensions of matrixing, you just lose it, right? So simply said, here's where we fail. One is that we can do different pricings for different product, right? Product A, revision B, revision C, 3 products, right? That's an easy one, right? Then we're going to sell it into this channel, right? In this state, in this country, whatever it may be. Imagine now being able to take not only different price levels, right, but take which territory. Within that territory, you're probably going to have states, right? You're going to have different customer market segments. And imagine on top of that, because think about social media, right? If I sell online, that's a channel. If somebody comes in through my retail store, well, that's a channel, right? And if I sell face-to-face, well, that's a channel. Well, there's 3 ways I can price them differently. But if a machine can do that for you, I think that's where I think we'll reduce that fear. I think is the question you're really asking me. How do we reduce that fear of pricing dynamically? And we can always say it's supply and demand. Different channels will have different requirements. But being able to jigger those numbers, right, the machine be able to do it for you and dynamically price something may actually increase sales. Because imagine if we condition, what happens to us with the airlines? They've conditioned us that if you wait till the last minute, prices what? Go up, right? Imagine if we were to condition the market now using this type of technology that if you wait till the last minute to the end of the quarter to buy something, the price will what? Go up. There's a lot of dynamics. But that's why I'm excited, Mark, because I think that's such a big topic that you can probably do a full day conference just on pricing.
Well, and I think that really helps salespeople feel more at ease because that's the whole challenge. And it's always what happens whenever a salesperson gets the ability to adjust price. What do? They adjust price.
Yeah.
But if I can take this away from, they never adjust it down.
Yeah, they never adjust up. Yeah.
Up, they always go down. So if I can take that away from them and give them the confidence that we're going to maximize revenue and maximize profit, and at the same time, maximize value. Because remember, price and value correlate together.
Right.
I think that in and of itself is worth the price of entry for AI into the sales arena.
Yeah. Imagine the amount of marginal revenue we're losing because of pricing at every point of contact or sale. If you could add up all those little bits. So in other words, AI is going to make us more efficient at pricing markets.
Yeah. And create more value for the customer because that's ultimately what happens. Yeah.
In the book, Victor, you also talk about emotional intelligence and artificial intelligence. How do the two align and how do they integrate so you can make better decisions?
Well, I think I used a couple examples in the book, and I think I use the IBM Watson one. I think was an interesting example that you want to, when we're communicating with people, wouldn't it be interesting? I've not seen data on this, but I'd love to see how many deals were lost because we misinterpreted an email. Do you know what I mean? Or, we just didn't get it right. Again, our brain immediately, as you said earlier, we get offended, right? Our ego kicks in like, how dare they be so short with me? Sometimes people respond with a short answer because they're busy or they're in a conference call, right? And maybe something. And so what I love about what's happening now with some of this new software that's out there is that when you get something from somebody text-wise, you can actually analyze this and say, what's the emotion? What's the sentiment? What's the intent behind what was being said? But what's brilliant about it is that, companies like, I think I mentioned Phrasey in there, is that you can actually type a response and it basically helps you with your emotional intelligence. Like, dude, you're not being sympathetic enough. You know what I mean? Hey, you need to tone that down. And the fact that you can see, and I think I have a graph or a chart that shows, it's almost like an equalizer, right? As you're typing, and you can just see the thing going, okay, now I can send it. Now, also imagine, wouldn't that be brilliant if everybody was forced to use that? Because how many of us have sent that one angry email that we regret sending the next day? You know what I mean? So imagine if that was our gatekeeper before we send anything out. I think it would be, I don't know how many deals we win, but I bet you we win a few more.
So what you're saying is that the machine will tell you when we hyperreact emotionally and maybe have a galvanic skin resistance thing attached to the computer that buzzes us and say, roll it.
Yeah, chill. Or either that or they're like our therapist. You know what I mean? After a while, you'll type something in that says, Victor, you sound a little angry tonight. Maybe now would not be a good day. You know what I mean? Like, pull that back. But I think that's fascinating that you can actually analyze text. And I think it's really fascinating. One of the things I forgot to mention, and I think we talked about this, Gerhard, is what triggered me to write the book. And what triggered me to write the book was I was doing a 3-day facilitation for this big healthcare company, and they demoed what they used in their telecenter. And so basically what they do is they have a machine that basically records our conversation. So Gerhard, I am the seller, you are the buyer. I'm trying to sell you some insurance policy. And what the machine did, and they actually demoed it. And my jaw dropped when I saw this. What they did was they demoed it. Now imagine there's 200 people making calls, right? They're each making 100 calls a day. That's 20,000 calls, right? Let's say they have a close rate of 10%. That's 2,000 sales. You got 18,000 that didn't close. What do you do with the 18,000? Great question, right? Who do you follow up with? How do you do lead prioritization in this case? And so what they did is using, again, natural language processing. What they did is they took the audio from you, the buyer, Gerhard, and what they did is they then basically converted that to text, transcribed it, analyzed it for, by the way, tone, speed, emotion, everything. They had keywords, keyword phrases, keyword clouds, what they were looking for, and the machine determined whether you warranted a call back or not. Brilliant. You know what I mean? It's brilliant because now the person is not thinking about who should I call back first? Again, we take the human emotional piece out of that. And the machine says, no, let me kind of configure this for you, prioritize the leads for you. What I also liked was that on the training side, I was talking to you, Gerhard. You mentioned certain things that should have triggered me as the actual salesperson that didn't. So they analyzed my voice, they analyzed my responses, and then all of a sudden, the machine recommends training modules for me that I need to improve on because I missed certain things, and it would highlight those things for me. I mean, just brilliant. I mean, that's where it's going. It's amazing.
Where was that training taking place?
I did this in Korea. That's as much as you'll get. It's a big healthcare company.
I love it. Keep the clients confidential.
Yeah, I can't tell you. It was a big client, but it was like, I just sat there, and then they had Gartner came in. And so it was just kind of, you sit there, and then Gartner came in, and they talked about the hype cycle, which I mentioned in the book, right? How everybody's hyped, and then you hit that trough of disillusionment, people are upset, and now, is this AI thing really real this time, right? Because in the 80s, it was all, and then as people said, 90s, AI went through its nuclear winter, people weren't really buying into it, but now the confluence of processing power, IoT, data, And these new algorithms with deep learning is now making this a real reality. So I think this time AI is real. And so when I saw Gartner talk about it in their hype cycle, they're like, this AI thing is real. And I think those two data points, seeing that demo and seeing Gartner's hype cycle was like, all right, hey, this is kind of what I used to do. Maybe I should go back and revisit this. And then I started researching, and I'm like, there's just all these companies out there already just going for the fences.
Are you saying that a lot of salespeople fall victims to their own unconscious expectations when they come off a client visit and they feel high?
Oh, I think so. I mean, we've all been there. Come on. I mean, yeah, the answer is absolutely yes. I mean, can we trust people to gauge with absolute certainty, that what they heard and what they saw is, first of all, complete information, and that they can make a rational decision based on that complete information? Well, the first part is not complete information. And so I think this removes some of that. Like if you're saying this deal is going to close, wouldn't it be nice if the machine would validate that for you, right? Because you can then take that to management and says, we need to put more resources. Not only do I think it's a go, the machine says it's a go. So I think, again, that's why I say it's augmenting.
That is actually now already in place with, let's say, SAP has the digital boardroom, and you can query the computer, and it's the same at Salesforce.com, where Mark Benioff is using, I believe, Watson to...
Einstein.
Yeah. Oh, well, Einstein, right.
Einstein, yep.
You were throwing out the name of a competitor there.
Yeah, that's IBM. IBM is Watson, and then Einstein is Salesforce.
Aren't they collaborating?
I think they're in the healthcare field. I think they are. I think IBM Watson needs help. And I think wherever they can find points of collaboration, they can. And the reason I know this is because my neighbor, pure coincidence, works for Salesforce in the healthcare field, and she writes code. You know what I mean? So I kind of milked her a little bit for information as well about what was going on at a high level, from an abstract level, what was going on in the market trends. And so I think they're trying to find places where they can collaborate, like good business people should.
Because you have a chapter on Salesforce.com in this book.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The information, what's interesting, the history of Salesforce is fascinating, first of all. If you really study the history of Salesforce and what they had to overcome back in the day when we used ACT, if you remember ACT, right? We went from Yeah, Goldmine was another one. And so what they're doing is that I think they're being more aggressive in terms of where they're going with artificial intelligence. I mean, I see them not only, I think my perception, I could be totally wrong. My apologies to IBM if I am. I see them as a more in touch company with what's going on in the market, specifically within the sales realm, because that's their focus. And I think they're able to develop applications. They got a pulse on the market. They know what we need. And I think everything you're starting to see with Einstein is just going to blossom into more sophisticated algorithms that we'll be able to use and bolt in easier.
So you are going to speak at Sales 3.0 on June 19th in Philadelphia.
Super excited about it. Thank you for having me. So I'm super excited to do this. And on the topic of artificial intelligence, I think, one of the things I want to talk about, and it's really something you already brought up, Gerhard, which is, what are the applications of this? And I've highlighted 10 areas where AI can impact the business from a revenue standpoint and from a cost reduction standpoint or expanding market share type of things. And so that's one of the things I'm going to try to do is talk about that so that people walk out of there with an understanding of, yeah, here's what machine learning is, here's what deep learning is, here's how it applies to you. But realistically, let's pull back on the joystick a little bit and what is realistic that you can implement today? Because I think that is the biggest challenge. Because in order to implement, a machine learning system, you have to have certain things in place. In other words, your data has to be at a certain place that they can suck it in. We have to figure out how to pull in the unstructured data, but even your processes. For example, when you look at Conversica, right, and all these intelligent advisors, the reason some companies can use them well, and I think who does the drones that has the Spark drone, that has the Phantom drone? I think it's, I don't know, I forgot the company. But anyway, so mine wasn't delivered, right? So I contacted customer service. After 5 or 6 email exchange, I go, I'm talking to a bot. And they were so good at it, the thing could respond, and I didn't catch it. My point is that companies like that have their scripts written out, your typical responses. right? And so they're able to pull those right in and bolt them in, right, into an AI system. But imagine if you're with a company whose requirements change, let's say, every 3 or 4 months. In other words, something changes in the regulation, something changes in the policy, well, then that becomes a little more difficult. And so I think assessing where you can use AI, how feasible is it to use in certain places, is a good topic of discussion that I'll be touching on at the conference.
And you mentioned drones. There are now drones available that just came out last week that have like 12 sensors and artificial intelligence where they can fly below trees and follow you as you ride your bicycle or whatever as you jog.
Yeah, no, it's scary. I don't know if you saw there was a revealing of what Google intends to do in the future. And I don't know if you remember what they had, but it was almost like I don't know what their Alexa equivalent is, that device they have, but it actually looks into your house. They actually filed a patent for this. I don't know if you saw this. It looks into your house, wherever it's at, and if it sees a book on the table, it'll record that information and recommend the book, right? If it sees that you use a certain, I don't know, type of furniture, it'll recognize the furniture and recommend that. It's a little invasive, but that's where the technology is going. But think about it. In the book, I highlight where we're exhausting data. Right? We get up in the morning, you know, if we got a nest in the house, I talk about that, boom, you're transmitting data. You're in the refrigerator, boom. Imagine the moment when you open the refrigerator and the thing tells you you're too heavy, you've been eating too many sweets based on what you've taken out. And not only does it contact your doctor, it'll contact your wife, it'll contact your mother, say, hey, Victor's over snacking. It's time to pull back on this. You know what I mean? It's crazy where it's going.
Well, you know, if you look at what Amazon just did yesterday in terms of buying Ring, what did they do? That allows them to really make that home delivery that much more expedient. Because
I didn't hear about this.
Yeah, Amazon bought Ring, you know, the doorbell company, right, the video company. They paid almost $1 billion for them. But it really allows them to get one more entry into the home, which, let's not kid ourselves, that's going to integrate with Alexa.
Yes.
I mean, all of these pieces begin to come together. We're moving from helicopter parent to helicopter company. It's going to be watching us.
Well, it's funny because it's getting to be very Orwellian, right? 1984 George Orwell stuff. But the fascinating thing is that Big Brother's not imposing the screen on our wall. We're actually bringing in the screen with the camera. And I think that's like, there's some irony in that.
Yeah, and then you go to the Amazon store in Seattle, and there are hundreds and hundreds of cameras and sensors, and there are no cashiers. You just grab things and put it in the bag, and you get a credit card receipt delivered on your iPhone.
It's amazing. I think what Amazon did that really impressed me, I don't know if I talked about it in the book, but when you look at their AWS, which is their Amazon Web Service, I always thought it was just cloud storage, right? I thought it was just cloud storage until I started researching it for the book. And what they did is I don't know if it's brilliant or dumb. I don't know which one it is yet. But what they did is that they have all these data scientists who develop all these algorithms, right? These machine learning algorithms, these deep learning algorithms, I mean, stuff that most people can't afford to build because it's just too complex, right? They then lease it out. They lease out algorithms. They lease out access to all these applications they developed. And their business just took off. I think it was some incredible number, like within 3 years, they hit 5 billion, some weird number like that. And so all of a sudden, companies, think about the power they've unleashed on the market. Companies who can't afford, you know, a cadre of data scientists or programmers can now just tap into AWS and take advantage of that. That's amazing to me.
So how does AI make you a better speaker?
How does AI make me a better speaker? I don't know. No, I haven't figured that one out. One day it's going to analyze my tone and it's going to look at the audience, look at me and says, okay, you know, when you said that didn't go well, Victor. And so I don't know, Gerhard. That's scary actually to think about.
You need to have a confidence monitor, you know, not just for your slides or for your talking points, but
you know what's going to happen, like in sales.
Feedback monitor where you can see a graph on how excited they are. And
you know those when they do those surveys that they have those
right.
I like, don't like during the political season. Remember they always have the I like, don't like what he said. And maybe that's what you'll start seeing, but that'll freak a speaker out. You know what I mean? And in my case, I don't want to know. Sometimes I walk out of there going, I killed that thing, right? And I don't want a machine coming back. No, you didn't. Don't want to hear it.
But we have that right now in a large venue. It's called Twitter. You stop and think about that. What is the Twitter stream saying about you right then and now? But hey, I want to come back to something, because sure, you personify this whole piece, because you bring a level of energy and emotion into sales, and that really is what you're all about. And yet here's AI. And I think there's a lot of people scared. Oh no, AI is going to replace me. And yet nobody is more emotional and passionate about sales than you are.
Correct.
And look at this, you're embracing it.
Right.
I don't think it's something we need to run from.
No.
But it's something that's really going to enhance us.
I keep using the word augment. It's going to augment. I mean, you think about it. I sat there, and I think I have it in the book where, the augmentation, I call it the assist, is that the typewriter came along so we wouldn't have to write anymore. Boom. Power, right? That's pure power. Everything that's industrial revolution stuff, right? Then came the computer, right? Now we have processing power, right? And now we're doing spreadsheets, PowerPoint presentation, the whole bit. And then after that, we talk automation, right? Autoresponders. Now it's programming, right? So that's the next level of power, right? And then I think this level is augmentation. It's not replacement. I think that's where you're going, Mark. Some people think it's replacement, and I think they miss it. It's augmentation. Right. And eventually you'll get to that point of singularity where it's about possibility. The machine just starts going hog wild, and it becomes, what do you call that Terminator? What do they call that net on the Terminator? I forgot what they call that net. But, that it becomes that, it takes over the machine. I think people have this in their mind, and it's the wrong way of looking at it. I think it's the wrong way of looking at it.
I think we could talk for another hour, but we are coming to an end of our time. Mark, what do you take away from this?
Well, when I read the book, and thank you for sending me a copy, Victor.
Thank you.
I took away, this was a very simplistic version of understanding what AI is in English for a salesperson. That's what I saw as a value in the book. And I think we all have a little bit of trepidation, and this book takes away the trepidation. And, oh, by the way, I can't pass this up. Knowing that you're an electrical engineer by trade, I mean, It's like, well, wow. That blew my mind away. So you are brilliant.
It does a lot of people, actually. It does a lot of people.
And torpedoes, excuse me. Do not go back to that other profession.
Well, what I got out of the book is that it really gives you a great idea of the state of the art today, but also you leave enough breadcrumbs where we actually can envision the future. And there is an imperative for every sales manager out there that's listening that you want to engage with that as soon as you can, because the world is going through a digital transformation, and AI and machine learning and cognitive computing is driving all this. So we're moving from 2.0 to 3.0, and 2.0 was all about moving online, and 3.0 is all about taking advantage of that extra intelligence by enriching the data and by allowing you to focus on what really counts, so the human relationship, but guided by the machine.
Love it. Love it. And I think I would end with this message is that every company should begin looking at AI applications. All you got to do is type in sales AI or sales machine learning, and you'll come across companies who have maybe little applications. And by the way, we're already using it. If you notice that when you get a message on your phone from somebody, it gives you 3 options to reply with. That's machine learning at a low level, but it's machine learning. It knows what the text was, and you can hit any of these 3 options. So there's so many things people can do now without spending a lot of money and be more effective.
All right, let's say goodbye to our friends on Facebook, and we are going to edit the video and have it available on sellingpower.com and on my YouTube channel. And by the way, I want to tell everybody, go to Victor Antonio's YouTube channel. It's probably the best content store that you can find anywhere on the web.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.